Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Mike has called from Exeter to bring us back to domestic affairs and maybe put it all into perspective. Mike, on that speech, the Queen's speech, what did you make of it?
Oh, yeah. My sort of main thing is about the Ben Act and the fact that these people, the parliamentarians, are going against what people want, essentially, and they're trying to frustrate everything, and we all know that. But the Ben Act says that if he doesn't get a deal, then he has to ask for an extension. Now, my thinking is that if he comes back with a deal, and it doesn't matter how good or bad it is, they've put themselves between a rock and a hard place, because he's complied, he's brought back a deal. If they don't vote for it, he's done what he should have done. He doesn't need to ask for an extension because he's brought back a deal. And if they vote it down, then on their head, we'll have no deal Brexit. That's the way I see it.
But it will just happen. It will happen anyway.
It will happen by their own hand, if you like, because they requested that he must bring back a deal. If he doesn't, he must ask for extension.
But
he brings back a deal. They vote it down. We leave.
Yeah, it's a possibility, but you call it Parliament frustrating Brexit. I mean, Parliament is just being Parliament, which is, either agreeing with or disagreeing with the government of the day, fighting for changes to law. That is Parliament's job. So it's also possible, isn't it? That, I mean, what you've said is possible, but it's also possible that if he comes back with a deal, they might try to force his hand and say, "Yeah, we'll vote for your deal as long as you send it back to the people."
Yeah, but they can't. I mean, what can they do if he
vote? Use their vote. Well, that's what Parliament's for.
But look, come on. Yes, it's a parliamentary democracy. We all understand that.
That's no small thing, Mike. It's no small thing.
They're not playing fair, are they? Because
I think they are.
The overwhelming majority of people, or the majority of people voted out, or the overwhelming majority of constituencies voted out.
It wasn't a constituency referendum, but
no, it wasn't. But I'm just saying. But it was.
All of Scotland voted in. Most of Northern Ireland voted in. So we can all play that game. But we are where we are on the state of affairs.
We can't all play that game because it was a vote, and 17.4 million, over 1.25 million people more, over almost 4% more, voted to leave. And now, you cannot, to be fair, you can't sit in Parliament and be honest and truthful and say, well, I don't care what 17.5 million people are, I'm a representative of it. Because you're not representing your people in any way, shape or form. All you're saying is, I know better than you. And let's face it, parliamentarians know no more better than anybody else.
How can you be saying, I know better than you?
That's what they're saying. That's in effect what they're saying.
Hang on, but go on. How can it be that if they say, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your deal. We insist upon it going back to the people for their approval, because there is detail in that deal. If he gets it, just as there was detail in May's deal that was not there during the woeful campaigns.
But they've got to accept that deal first.
But some of them will only accept it whilst also fighting for a second referendum, and I'm grateful for that.
You can't.
You object to it. I'm grateful for it.
No. No, I am. But what I'm saying is they can't say it needs to go to a second referendum until it's been accepted. And if they don't accept it,
they can wrap legislation around it and vote. That's the sovereignty of Parliament, which I think is a rather exciting thing. And sometimes things will go against you, and sometimes they will go for you. That is the sovereignty of Parliament. Mike, thank you very much for your call. Mike in Exeter.
Margaret is in Bradford. Margaret, what do you think he should do?
Well, I think the parliamentarians, the people who are Remainers, have boxed him into a terrible corner. It's almost like running a race.
So hang on, sorry.
Hang on, I want to speak.
Yes, but you're not answering my question. What do you think Boris Johnson should do?
Well, he's in a position where he can't do very much now, because he's got Bercow going out to the EU, telling the EU that they can't accept anything that he says.
Sorry, just run that bit by...
about that at the moment.
Run that by me again. When did Bercow do that?
Pardon?
When did Bercow do that?
It was in last week. It was in the paper. In one paper.
Which paper?
Yet again, the BBC
Was it the Express?
Quiet. Pardon?
Was it the Express?
No, it was the Independent.
It was the Independent. So John Bercow did what in Brussels?
He's been having consultations with one of the leaders in the EU Parliament, and he's
what does that? How does that change Boris Johnson?
Over and above the Prime Minister, asking him not to accept a no deal or anything like that.
But
and
they don't accept, Margaret. No one accepts no deal. No deal is what happens when nothing is accepted.
No deal has been put there by the Remainers because they've not allowed him to do as he wanted, which was to leave, as the fault position was, or still is.
Listen, I don't want to upset you, and I promise I'm going to listen to you. But if we both calm down a bit, I'd start again. No deal was put there by Remain people, and John Bercow has told the European Parliament not to accept no deal, and you got this out of the Independent.
I've got this, yes, from reliable resources, and there's a petition going on at the moment by some barrister, a legal barrister, who's trying to have him for treason because he's usurped the Prime Minister.
Right.
He's gone above
and if I
him.
said how has he usurped the Prime Minister, you'd say what?
Because he's got to be impartial. He's the Speaker in the House. He's got to be impartial, and he's overstepped the mark, and he's gone. As a Remainer.
So no, that's not treason, though, is it?
It is treason.
Well, I'm sorry, Margaret, but it doesn't matter how many times you say it. It isn't.
It is treason.
Okay.
It's treason because if I was running a race, right, and the people who were judging the race decided they didn't like me and started to throw tacks on the race track, and I stumbled and fell, and somebody behind me who they liked wanted me to win the race, then that's what you're calling democracy. And I take exception to your comments about people like myself who are staunch leavers. Take exception to the language that you use about us. We're not ignorant.
But you just accused
the
Speaker of treason, and you're uncomfortable with my language.
I'm uncomfortable with your language, yes.
But you just said treason.
What's wrong with treason? Treason is when you go against the country.
Yes, but he hasn't gone against the country, has he?
Treason, wasn't he?
No, he hasn't gone against the country, Margaret, because you haven't said anything substantive. I'm sorry if you find that word offensive, but you've just gibbered.
I'm sorry.
So am I.
Is determined by the fact
Margaret, you're
people
gibbering.
go against the country, and the country voted to leave.
Okay, so what do you mean?
How many other
Margaret,
words
you're
in
gibbering.
the English vocabulary are you going to deem the Remainers? Are you going to say are unspeakable?
Pardon?
You've mentioned a few yourself online today.
I'm not
on
complaining.
the telephone.
You're the one complaining about language. If you can, in a sentence or two, the point you rang in to make, without using words like treason or...
Do we have a corrupt group of Remainers in Parliament who are doing their utmost to stop Brexit?
You're talking about the people that voted 3 times for the withdrawal agreement.
I'm talking about people who are trying to stop Brexit.
No, yes, but
and they've done it from the beginning because they didn't want it to happen.
Yes, but who?
And I'm sorry, that's my comment, and that's all I have to say about it.
And that's Brexit in a nutshell. That's Brexit in a nutshell, you see, because you're perfectly entitled to gibber, but I have to then ask you to explain yourself or ask you questions, at which point you respond by saying, that's it, I'm not going to say anything else, I've completed my comment. So just some names of the people that you think are part of this... this group of people that have sabotaged. I don't even understand the point that you've made, Margaret. I can only apologise. But some names of the people that are on your naughty list. And that's why we are where we are, my friends. There we are. Gibber, 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 gibber. Nonsense, 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 nonsense. Treason, 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 treason. Wine, wine, wine. Poor me, poor me, poor me. Don't ask me any questions. Hang up. That's why we are where we are. So what happens next is that Margaret will persuade herself that what Boris Johnson has done is a good thing, despite the fact that it's worse than what Theresa May did. And John Bercow will be executed for treason.
Well, I was in Trafalgar Square last night late in the evening, and I just couldn't believe the amount of police trucks and police that this protest is needing to keep it calm, to keep it safe. And I just feel like for taxpayers' money and all the things that we want in our lives of course, climate change help, of course, safety for our children, but I just felt it was the hugest waste of money, and it just seemed like it was a big party that they were just destroying the actual area. It just had a negative vibe. And
that's a shame. I'm there. I can see it from where I'm sitting now. I haven't really picked up on any of that. I mean, the police...
Well, this was last night at about 11 o'clock, so it probably does change the atmosphere a bit.
That's 2 hours after the police started clearing it. So if there was a bad atmosphere, chances are...
They weren't clearing it when I was there, but it looked like they were getting ready to do it. I could see that it was moving into action. But I was at an event yesterday with Cressida Dick, and she could only stay for like a half an hour because of this, problems that they're causing, and I just feel like can't they get together and help our
how are the ones sitting in Trafalgar Square causing problems? What problems are they causing?
Because everybody has to tiptoe around them. I want to be able to roam freely. I don't want to have to worry about people stopping business, gluing themselves to places.
No. I didn't ask about businesses. I didn't ask about businesses being stopped. I'm clear on the difference between disruptive tactics and peaceful tactics. So how is sitting cross-legged in the middle of Trafalgar Square for a fortnight harming you?
Well, I don't think it harms me personally, but
who does it harm?
It harms London. It harms. Because it's just negative. Instead of doing something positive...
So are you opposed to all peaceful protest, then?
Well, I know you were working towards that. I guess if it was a one-off, but the whole extensive... they've made their point. Now,
so it's too effective, then? You're complaining because it's working too well?
I don't think it is. What change are they making? They're costing taxpayers tons of money. They're not actually helping.
Then I come back to the question of what does sitting cross-legged in Trafalgar Square singing Kumbaya do to harm you or anyone? And I would remind you on the line from Surrey that I'm 200 yards away from them at the moment, and I don't feel in any way disrupted or compromised.
Well, I just wish that there was a way they could get together and make it a better place. I just feel like it's stagnant. I don't feel like it's actually doing anything.
But you began by telling us it was doing lots and lots of bad things, and now you're describing it as stagnant, which is sort of ambivalent.
Day, it's probably stagnant. In the evening, maybe it gets a bit more rowdy. It just had a really weird vibe. It didn't feel right, and it just felt like such...
It's a slightly low threshold for police involvement, isn't it? Thinking that it's a really weird vibe, so we'll send in the police.
I've worked a lot with the police, and then you look at the amount of resources that were sitting there in their trucks. I'm sorry, I would rather have them going out, protecting children, stopping criminals, rather than babysitting a bunch of people.
They can't stop criminals. I mean, we'd all like to see more police on the streets. 20,000 cuts to the police force are probably a bigger issue than
we have all the cuts, and then they're being used for this. To me, it's wasteful. It's a waste. It seems like a waste of resources.
So why not just leave them there then, peacefully protesting?
Well, will they make a mess? I don't know. I just feel like
they might make a mess.
The whole area was...
Well, they won't make a mess. The one thing that they've been astonishingly good at, you just heard from the lady in Cheltenham, they even asked her to move along because she had a can of lager with her.
That's not the part of that I saw. I don't know what area she was in, but that is not what I saw.
She was in the middle of Trafalgar Square. She said so.
I walked right all the way
But you were there after the police had issued the order to remove them all. So it was bound to be a bad vibe, wasn't there? Because they were having their right, they were having their freedom of assembly compromise. Well, I'm sorry you felt it was a bad vibe. What would you do you think, instead to save the planet?
No, I don't mind them protesting, and I want the planet to change for my kids, for the rest of the planet. But I just don't think that. I think it's a waste of time and a waste of resources.
So what you're saying is the best protests, the protests that you like, are the ones that nobody notices.
No, I think they've done their protest. Now let's see what positive they can do.
Well, I think they would feel that until they actually see the change they need to see at governmental level and in the political space, and their protests have hardly begun. But I'm sorry you had a bad experience in Trafalgar Square. Quite a few people texting and tweeting me to tell me they were there last night and don't recognise what you describe, but I completely respect your right to have had a very different experience from everybody else.
He said, this does not mean people are banned from protesting in London. The condition applies specifically to the Extinction Rebellion autumn uprising. Mike is in Camden. Hi, Mike. Whose side are you on here?
Oh, I'm on the side of all Londoners that are fed up with them, to be honest with you. They've lost the plot now. They've lost their case. People don't care what they're doing. They're just like, let us get on with, let us run this city and stop turning Trafalgar Square into some smelly, oiky, run-down place. It's horrible.
Was there a time when you supported Extinction Rebellion and what they were doing?
No, I kind of back people that do the protests in the right way, you know, but the police have got a job to do, man. You know what I mean? If you go to Chelsea Football Club have to pay for the police that day. All the football clubs up and down the country have to pay the police out of their wages. How about Extinct Rebellion, if they got any money, paying for all the days that the police have got to manage them?
Well, there's a difference between football matches and the right to demonstrate, isn't there?
No. The right to demonstrate is one thing. I've seen marches. I don't march myself. I've seen marches. I've seen parades. You get your licence, you get your application, you tell the police, you're informed, you know your route, you do your thing, you go home.
But what I was curious about, Mike, was you said they've lost. You said they've lost the plot, as if you ever felt they hadn't lost the plot. Was there a time when you thought, I support them, they're doing the right thing?
When it first, do you remember in the summer when they jammed all the bridges, and I kind of thought people were kind of with them.
But what about you?
There and then.
But what about you, Mike? Did you support them back in the summer?
No, I've never supported them. I thought the whole thing. I think the whole thing's a complete. I think a lot of them. I mean, I personally believe. I don't know who Extinct Rebellion are. I don't know whether they have a base of registered rebellionaires that they know who they are. I've got a good idea that many anarchists from up and down the country are coming in to get their 2 weeks ho-ha holiday and then on to the next thing. There's lifetime activists that join on any of these brigades, as long as it's, all right, it's not been violent as yet, but
no.
I can bank on it. I think lots and lots of people are having a great little 2 week holiday year.
So, but leaving that to one side, you're saying you've never supported them. So when you say they've lost the plot because of what they've just done, you were never on their side anyway. You never agreed with any of this.
Well,
let's just say you don't. Anne is in Bromley. Hi, Anne. Whose side are you on here?
I do support their cause, but I don't think the way they're going about it is necessarily correct. I think when it comes to the point that they're disrupting people's working lives and people losing money and people can't get to hospitals, I think what they should possibly do is the police should say you can demonstrate. We have to have the right to demonstrate. We must. And I think they should have the right to demonstrate. Should say, yes, you can demonstrate on a daily basis, but you come up every morning. You don't bring tents. You don't bring cooking equipment. I've been on demonstrations. We didn't take cooking equipment. We went and bought food at local shops and that. And that's what they should do. They should say no sleeping overnight, no camping out. It's not
what did you demonstrate about, Anne? What got you so concerned you took to the streets?
I'm 59. I've never demonstrated in my life, but I have demonstrated about Brexit. I have to be honest. But that's another argument. My point that I'm making is I do support them, but I don't think they should be able to disrupt people going to work, people going to hospitals.
No, you made that point. I'm just curious, Anne, about what you were passionate about. Are you for or against Brexit?
I am for Brexit, but to be honest, Eddie, I don't think that's what I phoned in about. I think
but we're talking. Hold on, but we're talking about the right to protest, and you said you've been on pro-Brexit demonstrations.
I have indeed, yes.
Right, and you didn't worry about whether your right to protest was going to be taken away.
No, actually, I made that point. I did say to you, we must have the right to protest, we must have the right to demonstrate. But when it comes to people camping out overnight and bringing cooking equipment and having parties, no, I don't agree with that.
But what about the MEP we heard from earlier, Anne, Ellie Chowns, who wasn't camping out overnight? She went to Trafalgar Square, as she told us earlier in the programme. She tried to ask the police why they were moving people away. She said she didn't get a satisfactory response, and she ended up in a police cell till 3 o'clock. Do you think that's okay?
No, I don't. No, I don't at all. I don't agree with that. No, I think if you're... the police have got a hard job. I'm not always for the police, but they have got a hard job. And I think that if they said, OK, you can demonstrate from maybe 6 in the morning till 11 at night, fine, that's great. Then they all go home, they come back the next day, and that will sort out the people that are really there for the cause, or those that are there for just a little bit of a party. There are people, I'm not saying they're all like it, I'm sure the majority of them are not, but there are people that just jump on the bandwagon, and if something's going on, they'll join in.
And Anne, before I let you go, since you and we're all interested in Brexit, what do you think of what's going on? I mean, we've been trying to keep you updated. Do you think it's going to happen? Do you think this is going to get a deal?
I think Boris Johnson will get a deal, but what sort of a deal? I mean, is he going to get the same sort of deal that Theresa May had?
It looks very similar.
On the first 2 votes, and I think he is, and personally, I don't think that's the right deal. If we're still kept in the customs union, if we're still kept in the single market, if we still have to have free movement of people, if we don't get a vote and we can't veto, then to me, we're not coming out of Brexit.
And if that happens, Anne, I think you'll be back on the streets, am I right?
I think you could be right, yeah.
All right, good to hear from you.
But this is what I'm talking about psychologically. Why are you still cross with people who told you were being misled and not cross with the people who misled you? Whether they talked about Norway and Switzerland being feasible destinations for Brexit, like Farage did, whether they talked about the German car industry ordering Mrs Merkel to give us preferential terms and conditions like Digby Jones did, whether it is the idea that we'd be able to have our cake and eat it like Boris Johnson told you, or that it should be the easiest deal in human history like Liam Fox told you. Pick a Brexiter and then pick something that they said and then hold it up to the light and see that it's fallen to pieces. So why aren't you cross with them? Instead of sending texts like this to your favourite radio presenter. Can you see this text? Can I say these words on the radio, or are some of them too fruity? It's quite close to the line. Can we just check with the... No? OK, I'll intervene. The EU are blood-sucking, sick, twisted, arrogant, and then a word that you're familiar with to describe the human rectum. You are a smug, arrogant, nasty professional, and then a word to describe a female dog, which is nothing to be proud of. Suck it up. You've been so wrong. And I'm reading this because it's come from a phone number. If it had come from a Twitter these days, I'd just be thinking, go back to St. Petersburg. But this is a phone number, which means, we could ring him back if we wanted. Suck it up. You've been so wrong. No matter how hard you try to convince yourself otherwise, in the future you will look back and feel embarrassed. It's spelt wrong, inevitably. I hope we leave with no deal. So that's what I mean. How have you ended up so twisted and furious and curdled that you're still cross with me when all the promises these people made you have fallen apart? It's so bizarre. It's as if I'm one of those people that tries to intervene in an incident of domestic violence, and I end up getting attacked by the victim and the perpetrator. That's what it's like, and police will tell you that very, very often happens. But there we are. Yes, the EU are blood-sucking, sick, twisted... Oh, mate, I love you, man. Seriously, I'll light a candle for you in church on Sunday. It's 11:08. What's going on? Martin's in Portsmouth. Martin, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. I'm wondering why you chose to read that text out rather than the one that I just sent.
Well, you're on the phone, Martin. It would be a bit silly to do both, so carry on.
Yes, I agree. I'm 53 years old. I've been aware that the EU is toxic for the UK since I was 15.
What led you to that conclusion?
Basically, it was a discussion with a friend at school whose father was a dairy farmer.
Yes.
And it was the way his herd was being reduced under EU quotas.
Right.
And he was being told how much milk he could produce. It was all about the price fixing. It was not necessarily then about free movement of people. I've got a Spanish stepfather, for instance, who benefited from that.
Yes.
But basically, one thing on top of another, I see the EU as a toxic relationship for the UK.
You know that milk quotas were withdrawn in 2015, don't you?
That's as maybe, but what I'm saying is...
Did you know that? Yes, or did you know that? Yes,
no, I didn't know
but it was
that.
made up by something that's not true anymore, Martin.
That's just one thing.
What was the other one then?
You asked me what the first thing that drew my attention to it was. And
that's no longer true, so we have to park that one and try again.
OK. Regardless of that, I think that the EU is toxic.
Yes, I know you do, but why? Because the example you've given isn't true, and you'll be aware that the National Farmers Union...
You asked... Hang on, wait a minute, mate. You asked the question, why do we dislike you? as opposed to these muppets that...
No. Why are you getting angry with the people that told you were being misled? So here you are on the radio saying, I voted Leave because of something that doesn't exist anymore.
I've told you before on your show, the reason I'm angry with people like you is because I believe you undermined our position from the initial negotiation.
But your position was built on something that's not true. How can I undermine that?
Not my position.
Yeah, you're talking about milk quotas, and they don't exist anymore. And the National Farmers Union has warned that a no-deal Brexit would... Well, in fact, we don't even need to listen to the National Farmers Union. We could listen to Patrick Minford, the pocket economist of the Leave vote, who said that leaving without a deal would decimate agriculture. So you voted to decimate agriculture because you wanted to protect agriculture.
Which is why I probably would have preferred a no-deal situation, which is why I'm now keen that a deal gets done. But
sorry, just run me through that again.
39 billion out of us in a divorce bill,
yes,
when we've already paid way more into the EU than the majority of the other 27 member states.
So, well, that's A, that's not true, and B, the return on what we pay into the return on what... Martin, none of this becomes true just by repeating it. The return on what we pay for single market membership is estimated to be between 800 and 2,500%. So... there's no such thing as milk quotas, but you know the EU is toxic. That's a very strong word. Just provide a little bit of evidence before we bid each other good day.
OK. The setup where we've got now freedom of movement and the NHS and other parts of business are using trained and qualified people from the EU to fill job roles.
43,000 vacancies in the NHS at the moment, mate.
Yeah, and they should be being filled by some of the 1.35 million unemployed.
43,000 vacancies in the NHS. I'll double-check that. I'm doing it off the top of my head, so forgive me if it's slightly higher or lower. But what's your point again? When there's tens of thousands of vacancies in the NHS, there's too many foreigners filling the jobs that aren't vacant.
Hang on, just can you stop talking for a second so I can get a sentence out, mate?
As soon as you start making sense.
1.35 million people unemployed, which is low.
How many of them are qualified doctors and nurses?
No, and they're not qualified doctors and nurses because our training infrastructure has been run down.
But there's tens of thousands of vacancies.
Has been able to use free movement of people.
But there's tens of thousands of vacancies.
I'm not understanding what you're saying, so I can hardly hear you, but...
OK, well, a minute ago you were complaining I was talking too much, and now you're complaining that I'm not talking loud enough. I'll say it again. There are tens of thousands of vacancies in the NHS. How can there be too many foreigners in it?
The reason there are all those vacancies is because our training infrastructure has been run down by successive governments using the free movement of people as an excuse so that they can fill those vacancies from the EU.
So it had nothing to do with the EU then? It was successive British governments lying?
No, James, for once we're in agreement. It has nothing
there we
to
go.
do with
We got there in the end. So your reason for voting Leave had absolutely nothing to do with the EU, and your other reason for voting Leave ceased to be true in about 2015. You crack on, mate. And I know that you haven't budged 1 millimetre. The EU's toxic. Something about cows. Foreign nurses. And there you are, still wanging on, mate. And still getting cross with the people who've told you for years that you were being mugged, and not getting cross with the people who've mugged you. Live on national radio, making an absolute underpants of yourself, but still cross with the people who told you not to do this, instead of the people who told you that you were being conned. I don't know what to do. But I do know who to call if I've ever got a bridge to sell.
Let's hear from Darren in Swansea before we go to the news headlines. Darren, hello.
Hi, Sheila. How's it going?
I'm okay.
I'm just wondering, which one would you prefer? Would you prefer a referendum or would you prefer a general election?
On the question of Brexit, I prefer a referendum. On the question of the direction of travel of our country and all kinds of other issues, I prefer a general election.
Right. Yeah, so that's a good point, that is it. The referendum... You see, the problem with a referendum is you've still got the 75% in Parliament. They'll vote anything down that the government brings back. So a referendum is brilliant. It's a two-way win for Remainers, because if you're a Remainer, if you actually win the referendum, then that'll be it. There'll be no more votes. The people have spoken brilliantly. If you've got a referendum, then you'll still have the 75% of parliamentary MPs in there that are willing to vote anything down.
So you want a different parliament?
It's a win-win.
You want a different parliament?
I want a different parliament. I want to be able to kick out the useless MPs that we've got in there. Stephen Kinnock is my MP.
Why is he?
I want to kick him out.
Why do you think he's useless?
Because he does nothing for his constituents. I live in his constituency, and he is about as much use as a chocolate fire guard. Now,
did you vote for him?
No, I didn't vote for him. But
sorry, I just because he seems like a very bright man. How do you normally vote in general elections if you do have a party you follow?
In the general election, I will usually vote basically on my heart, which might be independent.
Right.
But like I say, I've had many things with Stephen Kinnock, who is an absolute useless MP. I think if you go to 67% of his constituency voted for leave, and he's done everything to thwart that. But that's
no, he hasn't. He's supporting. He's voting to support the deal.
No, that's not. That isn't the deal.
Sorry. So it's no deal.
Not a deal.
Is no deal your preferred deal?
Yeah, it's a no deal because...
Okay, the absence of a deal is what you prefer, and a man who supported the deal is a useless MP. Okay, I think we've got a Brexit hardliner there, have we not? Darren, thank you for your call. Darren in Swansea. Billy's done that already. Billy in Belfast. Hello there.
Hi, Sheila. How you doing? Sheila, can I just take up first? I was going to actually say something else, but your last point you just made about the referendum. First of all, can I say, yes, we can have a second referendum. But the only thing should be on the ballot is whether we leave with a deal or we leave with no deal. Now, you're saying there about we should have went and seen if we could have got a deal and brought that back to the people. I appreciate that. But as has happened and would have happened in the same instance, imagine the deal we might have got. Now, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but imagine the deal this country might have got from the EU. If we didn't have the likes of Dominic Grieve, Philip Hammond, Jeremy Corbyn going in behind our negotiators and cutting the legs out from under them. The same as they've done with Boris Johnson. They have tied his hands. And the EU has no incentive to give us a decent or a good deal. And yesterday I read that 37 MEPs have sent a letter to Donald Tusk, totally bypassing our Prime Minister. Imagine the deal we might have got. But we've been crippled, hook, line and sinker every which way. Because 48%, or the Remainers, or Remainiacs you want to call them, have tried everything they can to block
Billy,
this, to stop it.
Billy, we're not at war with the EU. Politicians are perfectly within their rights. I would be perfectly within my rights to sit down with Michel Barnier if I ever got the opportunity and say what I thought about Brexit. It's no different. Why not? Why not?
Well, apparently, according to EU law, the only people that the EU can negotiate with or talk to is the British government.
No, negotiate with, yes. You can talk to whoever you like.
Well, I mean, you understand where I'm coming from here?
I do. I just disagree with you. You can talk to whoever you like.
Yes, but that doesn't give the country a united front, Sheila.
Well, that's okay. That's called politics. We're not united.
Well,
we think differently.
No, we do think differently, but that is what has hampered this country, what has held us back from day one. Because from the minute the results came through on the morning after the referendum, the establishment, or whatever you want to call them, has done everything they can to block it, to stop it, to thwart it.
No, the establishment is the government having the negotiations with the EU. That's the establishment, isn't it? That's the establishment of the day, the government of the day. Billy, thank you. Billy in Belfast.
Let's get some voices from Northern Ireland. David is in Belfast. David, can you remember what you were intending to say when you rang in? I've had you on hold for so long.
I think it was 3.5 years ago it started. But no,
what do you want to say?
You're asking the question what you think Boris is up to.
Yes.
I'm of an opinion that Boris will take a deal no matter what the EU throw at him because they're scared of the Brexit party. Boris can't approach the nation in an election with the EU, still in the EU. because the Brexit Party will wipe the floor with them if they're still in the EU. So the EU.
Well, when we say wipe the floor, they won't, but they'll make enough of an impact on the floor. They'll spill enough onto the floor to mess things up for the Conservatives.
Certainly will,
yes.
And this is what the whole rush is, and that's why Boris is bound down to everything, going against everything he's told the Unionist people of Northern Ireland, and the people in England and Scotland and Wales are getting sucked in by this big bubbly character. But this guy, his brother walked away from him. It says it all.
And where do you stand politically on domestic politics in Northern Ireland?
Well, I vote for the Democratic Unionist Party.
So you're a DUP supporter. What do you think they're going to do? What do you want Arlene Foster to do, and what do you think she's going to do?
I want Arlene Foster to continue what she's doing, oppose this, because it was opposed back when Theresa... This is a worse deal than Theresa May brought back at the start. Basically,
I'm going to pause you there. I'd very much welcome a caller who disagrees with that, because I agree with David, and there's a broad consensus that on the island of Ireland, this is from a Northern Irish point of view, certainly from a Unionist point of view, this is considerably worse than what Theresa May secured. So in the interest of balance, I'd love to hear an alternative take on it, but for now, we're sticking with David. Carry on.
Are you sticking with me for the time being?
Well, no, I'm just saying that I'm in agreement with you on this, but that perhaps there is an alternative analysis that somehow this is... I'd like to find a unionist that likes it, I suppose I'm saying.
You've played all the clips with Boris
exactly.
the DUP at their thing. You've played... who else have you played? You've played them all. Every promise is broken by this Conservative Party. And the whole thing is Theresa May's deal reenacted with a different person at the head of it. And it's nothing to do with Brexit. If it was to do with Brexit, the DUP would have shook Nigel Farage's hand. Or, sorry, the Conservative Party would have took Nigel Farage up on his offer and created a Brexit parliament. But no, it's all
maybe. I see bits of what you're saying. Boris. So you want her to say no. Can I ask what you feel about Brexit itself, finally?
Brexit, I'll tell you the reason, and you might find this strange why I voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
I watched David Cameron go across to Europe and ask for minuscule changes to the way Europe operates. And the European Union treated David Cameron like a little schoolboy. And I just remember watching that saying, you see, if I ever get an opportunity to break away from this European, I'll vote for that.
Yes, I've heard this before. I mean, it's nice we found something we can disagree about, because I don't agree with that analysis, but I respect your reasoning. Could you tell me how you'd vote now?
I would vote now. I would still vote to leave the European Union. Because I'll tell you another thing. Dominic Raab was approached by a member of the European Union who is basically a known Nazi and told him the price for Brexit would be Northern Ireland. And it's playing out now.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I'm surprised. The price for Brexit is Northern Ireland, mate, and you're telling me that you'd still vote for it.
I was absolutely full for Brexit, but I want the people in Northern Ireland voted for the Remain.
Yes.
But Sinn Féin and the media hijacked that vote. And
we're covering too much territory here. Just simply, and I don't know who you're referring to when you talk about someone being a Nazi. Obviously, it's unlikely to be true, but it's a figure of speech. The bottom line is that it was always going to be no deal, no Brexit, or a border in the Irish Sea. And if it's a border in the Irish Sea, it's a disaster for unionists, and you're a unionist. So just talk me briefly through why you're in favour of a disaster for unionists as a unionist.
Because I want to see the United Kingdom. That was the question that was asked. It wasn't asked, does Northern Ireland want to leave the European Union?
But now we know what happens. So the vote's not theoretical anymore, it's practical.
The fight's not over yet. Boris has put his mask down. Everybody's seeing it.
I get all of that. I just don't know how you can sustain support for Brexit with now the knowledge of what it means.
Because you have to fight. If you're trampling all over democracy.
No, I know all of that. I don't care about that. I'm interested in your thinking, your reasoning. You're in favour now of a border in the Irish Sea.
Right, hear me out for 1 second.
I will.
Northern Ireland was invited to take part in a nationwide referendum.
Yes.
UK-wide.
Yes.
The decision was taken for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union.
Yes.
In my eyes, if they're going to treat Northern Ireland differently than the rest of the United Kingdom, that referendum should be null and void.
Right. So then we have another one, and you vote?
I'll vote to leave every time.
Okay. I don't think I'm not going to make any progress on this line of inquiry, but I'm very grateful to you for the call.
There's going to be a transition period, so the two don't kind of line up. And the fact that someone earlier claims that whether Johnson gets his deal through Parliament or not is a win for the Tories because he can try and say, well, I got a deal and they wouldn't allow us to do it, is a winner for the Tories in the polls. I think couldn't be further from the truth. It's possibly the most recent misunderstanding the Tories have had with the British public since Cameron called the referendum in the first place.
Why do you think it won't work that way for them?
Because I don't think anyone that voted for Brexit thinks that what either Theresa May has done or Boris Johnson has done is delivering in Brexit, and they don't trust them to do it.
What do you think Brexit is? Is it just walking away, down tools and walk away?
Well, I think most people would agree that they would want a fair trade, a free trade deal. And I think if we could get a free trade deal, that is what most people believe Brexit is or would be. And I've always believed that the fastest way to get there is by leaving with no deal.
How do you protect the Good Friday Agreement in that process?
Okay, as far as Ireland goes, I want the UK to stay together if it can, but the long and the short of it is, at the moment, they're living together like a divorced couple, Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. They need to make a decision one way or the other. They either need to get back together or act like two separate countries if they're going to be two separate countries.
Craig, you do know why Northern Ireland exists, don't you?
Yeah,
there was no row between the Irish and divorce between the Irish. It was,
all I'm saying is that they're neighbouring separate countries. They've got separate regulations. They're neighbouring separate countries, but they're on the same island. They're in the same house, effectively. And if there's going to be differences between the two, then they're going to have to, live with the consequences of those differences, or have a vote one way or the other for unification.
Do you know, can I recommend you go and read the Good Friday Agreement? It's not that long. There are abridged versions of it that you could read. The reality is what you're saying, I think, is showing a really quite usual misunderstanding of Ireland by British people. The truth is that if Ireland just said, oh, come on, let's just ignore the whole British factor of our history. Let's just ignore it all. They'd be breaking the Good Friday Agreement, and that is really risky. It's life and death. It's life and death risky. It's not just trade. It's life and death risky.
It's life and death risky if they make it life and death risky.
Did you see the members of the member of the new IRA on television last night on Channel 4 in a balaclava saying that the second any infrastructure went up, it would become a target for violence? And do you think that the people who build that infrastructure, or man or woman that infrastructure, wouldn't be targets for violence as well?
Of course, I don't watch Channel 4 News, so I haven't seen it. But I think that it's a glowing fact. There's far larger problems. If a bit of paper for this little agreement, if this agreement is keeping them away from, acts of terror, which effectively is what it is, then there are larger problems that need addressing.
It's more than that. It's identity as well. And peace on Ireland and the all-Ireland economy. You see, our conversation is a mirror image of the last 3 years of EU-UK negotiations. It would be great if we could wish all the complexities away, but we can't wish the complexities away because they are real.
They are real, but if Northern Ireland wants to be part of the United Kingdom and Republic of Ireland wants to be part of the European Union, they're going to be two separate things. But
some citizens of Northern Ireland want to identify as Irish, not British.
Okay.
What happens to them?
Then they'll have to make a move the other side of the border then, won't they?
Oh, a little bit of ethnic cleansing. Nice. Craig, thank you. Craig in Oxford.
Taylor is in Harlow. Taylor, what would you like to say?
Hello?
Hello, Taylor. What's on your mind?
Hi, I'm in London, actually.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yeah. Okay, so this deal has to go through, James.
Yes.
It has to go through. Now, ask me why.
Why?
So, two reasons.
Number one?
Well, first reason, uncertainty needs to be cleared. Simply,
there's lots of ways of clearing uncertainty. This is only, this is one of them. So that works.
The British people voted to leave, so we have to leave. Party politics needs to be put aside,
that's
and people need to move forward.
But I ask you why.
And secondly,
no. The reason why is such an important word is because when you say 17.4 million people voted to leave, I say why. And we've just been through all the reasons that they gave that have turned out not to be true. Hey, also, you know, remember, we don't have to pay them a penny. Remember that? We don't have to pay them a penny. Alternative arrangements, GATT 24, WTO terms. It's all nonsense, mate. So I did look. It might provide, and also it doesn't provide certainty. What will happen at the external borders with the European Union, Taylor, if we leave under the terms of this withdrawal agreement?
I don't know all about that.
Hang on, where's the certainty, mate?
Well, okay, you might have got me there, but I've got
right, next.
a pound, you see. So if this deal goes through, the pound is going to shoot up, which means I'm going to make quite a lot of money, which that means the deal has to go through.
Fair enough. I mean, of course, whether it scales dizzy new pre-referendum heights, we will have to wait and see. But of course, the other madness, a very good mark of the madness, is let's give Taylor the benefit of the doubt. The pound is going to go back up again. Everyone will cheer and celebrate. But they were telling us 2 weeks ago that the pound going down was a good thing. Do you remember? Because it was overvalued and it would be good for exports. This is what I mean about false equivalence and not really even knowing what day it is anymore. So if the pound goes up, then people who told us last week that the pound going down was a good thing because of, it was overvalued and it would be good for exports will be like Taylor saying, no, actually, sorry, it's a really good thing when the pound goes up. It's a bad thing when it goes down. They don't know whether they're coming or going because, well, thanks to Uncle Nigel, we injected epic dishonesty into the public bloodstream, and it's going to take generations to get it out. Still don't know what he's so upset about. John's in Basingstoke. John, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. First-time caller.
You're very welcome, John.
I get perturbed that when you talk about the EU as the biggest trading bloc,
yes,
you continually ignore the Commonwealth and what that could mean as a trading bloc,
right,
and as a force for good in the world.
I certainly don't ignore it. I just...
You never mention it.
Tell me why I should, again?
Because
what countries
has the potential for being the biggest trading bloc in the world.
The Commonwealth?
Yeah.
But they don't have free trade agreements with each other.
But we can, as a Commonwealth, be as...
So what sort of countries are you thinking of?
As a trading bloc, it then has the emerging nations.
So what sort of countries are you thinking of to replace our relationships with, say, France and Germany?
The Commonwealth.
Yes, which countries?
Of the Commonwealth.
Which countries?
All of them.
So name a couple.
India, Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah, they're quite far away.
And?
Well, trade means
India is
transporting
one of the biggest emerging nations.
Yes, I know, but they're quite far away.
Yeah, but is India one of the biggest emerging nations?
Probably, yes. I don't.
Well, there's no probably.
Point do you think you're making?
Well, that then gives you a huge trading bloc.
Yes, but you know there's a shop at the end of your road, and there's an enormous shop in India. The size of the shop in India doesn't make it more convenient than the shop at the end of your road, John.
That's nonsensical.
Okay,
so it's talking about huge trading blocs, which you've said all the time about the EU.
Yeah, just run me through the 1994 EU-India cooperation agreement, will you?
You're being smart again. And
I know, it's so annoying, isn't it? But seriously, tell me about it.
It doesn't actually make for good conversation because it makes you look like the
smart,
in the
as you said, it makes me look smart. But run me through the 1994 EU-India cooperation.
No, I can't.
But then why are you on the radio talking about India?
Because I'm talking about the Commonwealth of Nations.
They've been trying to negotiate a free trade deal between the EU and India since 2007.
Yes, but that's the EU. We're not talking about the EU. We're talking about Britain and the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I know we are. John, I don't want to fall out with you, mate. But I'll take your point. Let's correct it for your benefit, OK? So some people think that instead of trading with France and Germany and the European Union with absolute friction-free trade, we should be pursuing similar arrangements with India and New Zealand and Australia. There we go.
And the whole Commonwealth.
And the whole Commonwealth.
Yes, what's wrong with that?
Nothing at all. It's genius.
Well, would you then support the undemocratic EU?
No, definitely not. Down with the undemocratic EU. Up with the democratic Commonwealth. What's the difference again?
The democratic Commonwealth is an emerging
I think reality's at the door, John. I'll have to crack on. But I love that line about the Titanic. We finally hit the iceberg. Now we can get on with the business of sinking. Iceberg means iceberg. Cosme is in Richmond Park. Cosme, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
First time I'm calling. I think my cousin's called in before, but not me.
Fascinating.
Can I just politely ask you that I've been waiting 17 minutes to speak to you.
I do apologise.
You don't cut me off. No, please don't apologise, but please I just ask you that if you don't agree with me, please just don't cut me off or bring in the adverts. I just ask you gracefully.
The news is in 3.5 minutes, so you've just wasted about 10% of your allotted time.
Okay, well, I'll try not to. I'd like to pick up on the point from the gentleman from Basingstoke in the Commonwealth, but before I do that, I am a Spanish Argentine, and can I just say that I do support Brexit, and I don't consider myself to be a fascist or a racist
well, nor do
or
I.
a bigot.
But again, it's 11:27 now.
Please allow me. Or a little Englander.
Nor do I.
And I don't consider myself to be an ignoramus.
Well, we'll see.
I'm not as clever as you. I'm not as clever as you, mind you, but I do feel that I was clever enough in 2016 to be as informed about leaving as you were informed about remaining. I think we were as informed as each other.
Possibly, yes.
And let's be honest.
Can we move to the point? Are we going to make a point that I can respond to?
Yes, I'm making the point. The UK in 2016 is not surveillance China. It wasn't lockdown Kashmir. It was an open society. Information was available to all of us.
Yes.
So your informed decision was as good as my informed decision to leave. Getting back to the point about Commonwealth, I work in finance, and you're right. The markets are further away, but I also do believe that there is an immense amount of opportunity there.
Good.
I would like to start by saying there's 2.5 billion population. The GDP is not that far. Once the UK leaves the EU, it's not that far in trillions from that of the EU.
17.28 the EU, 10.45 the Commonwealth.
Yes.
The Commonwealth includes the UK, which accounts for about 1/6 of the total. But you know this.
Yes, okay, but the
GDP of the whole continent of Africa is about half that of France. I appreciate there's a lot of money to be made for speculators.
Please don't cut. Why don't you allow me to? I always say to my children, allow somebody to finish their point. You cut me off.
Cosme, I've hardly had a word in edgeways. I've heard about your brother. I've heard more about your brother than I have about my thoughts during this call.
Anyway, but the point I would like to make is that there's more money to be made. First of all,
I agree. There's definitely money to be made for international speculators.
Please don't cut me off. Please.
I'm not cutting you off. I'm just talking, Cosme. Please calm down.
But you're getting my Latin blood boiling, and I'm just wanting to speak calmly.
Well, try harder. It's not going terribly well. I mean, all I've done is tell you some numbers. I don't know why you're shouting at me, Cosme.
No, but I'm the one with the numbers. You come back with me.
It's 11:29. You've got 40 seconds left.
Okay. Well, we have a large Commonwealth diaspora in this country. We are world leaders in project finance. There's more money to be made in a bridge in Pakistan, in the port of Gwalior, in the Arabian Sea, where the rules are. We're paving the way for our Commonwealth future.
Yes.
Then there is let's say, a motorway in Bulgaria.
Yes.
That is true. But you should therefore consider. I'm not saying the EU is bad, but it's not the only model out there.
Well, no one says it is.
Okay, we have a large diaspora. Let's take advantage of our comparative advantage, our strengths and our links in the Commonwealth, and you wait and see.
Why can't we do that now?
Well, precisely because we are being pushed down by the EU.
How?
We're being limited by the EU.
How?
You know very well how.
How does EU membership prevent you investing in a bridge in Pakistan?
Well, it does. Because you have to have certain regulations, you have to have certain commitments with the EU.
So down with regulations and commitments.
I know, not down with regulations.
It's time for the news now, Cosme. It's time for the news. I wish I could say the same. I'd love to have got a word in edgeways, but good luck with the bridge. Good grief.
A good moment to catch up with the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, who's in our Westminster studio. Welcome, how are you?
Good afternoon, Edwin.
When did you decide, I know you're going to back this deal, when did you decide you would back it?
Well,
I think it's important, Eddie, to reflect that this deal is very different to the previous deals that have been negotiated and presented to Parliament. This deal is fundamentally different in the sense that it will enable the British government, unlike the last deal, to take back control of laws, trade, borders and money without disruption. And this will give us the type of freedoms that the previous deal did not, so the ability to strike our own free trade deals and engage with the European Union over a transition period to achieve that as well. So this is a fundamentally different deal which very much meets, certainly from my perspective, but I think more broadly as well, the referendum mandate, the way in which, you know, we as Conservatives in government have previously spoken about taking back control and delivering Brexit.
And at what point did you decide you wanted to back it?
Well, I have been, obviously, as a member of the government, a member of the cabinet, I've been cited because obviously I've been working on many aspects of Brexit, not just from my department, but across government. I have reached that conclusion, obviously, through many of the discussions. I've been part of those talks as well in terms of the direction of travel we've been going.
Had you seen the text of it when you decided?
I've not only seen text, I've discussed it with the Prime Minister and with my cabinet colleagues as well. So it's, you know, it's important. This has been an ongoing process across government, in particular those in cabinet, to really work incredibly hard. And I cannot emphasise enough, over the last 10 weeks alone, there's been a significant amount of work in government with not just the Prime Minister but key Sherpas, key officials, to really fundamentally bring a different deal together that actually meets many of the key objectives that had been originally set out by the government, the objectives outlined by the Prime Minister as well.
Have you seen an economic assessment of the impact of the deal?
I have seen, what I have seen are the real details of the deal in terms of the political declaration.
Yes, but what about an economic assessment of the impact?
Well,
have you seen that?
I think it's important to reflect on the economic freedoms that we will have going forward.
But have you seen an economic assessment of what the deal will do?
It's impossible to put together based on political declaration and ongoing negotiations.
It's not impossible at all.
Well, actually, Eddie, it is, because first of all, the point about this deal...
Well, UK in a changing Europe has done it.
If I can finish...
Well, if you can deal with the question. You haven't seen an economic assessment of the impact, have you?
The point of this new deal right now is to get Brexit done and to have a discussion, debate tomorrow.
Worry about the economics later.
Votes in Parliament. Well, actually, if I may, the economics around not just the future economic well-being of our country, but also there are many other aspects as well to this deal, which aren't just about the economics, security, cooperation, and many other aspects. The point about the economic future of our country will be subject, obviously, not just to future discussions, a future partnership, but also free trade arrangements. But the key point about getting a deal, Eddie, is that we will leave with a smooth transition, and it'll enable all businesses to plan and prepare and work with government as well to deliver the economic security and prosperity of our country.
Well, Downing Street says there is an official economic analysis of the impact of the deal, but it won't be produced until after the vote. So MPs will be voting not knowing what the government thinks the economic impact will be. There is an assessment published by UK in a Changing Europe. It describes itself as the authoritative source for independent research on UK-EU relations. And it's based on the economic modelling of Theresa May's deal, Boris Johnson's deal and no deal. And the report says that under all three options, the UK trade would be lower than it would be if the UK stayed in the EU, with Boris Johnson's plan being considerably more damaging than Theresa May's. And looking ahead 10 years, it estimates that Boris Johnson's plan would cost British people £800 a head. Don't you wish you'd seen an economic assessment of the impact of the deal before you made up your mind?
Well, actually, Eddie, I would completely dispute that on the basis that economics and market fundamentals are fairly dynamic as well. So, you know, that is just an assessment that has been taken based on, you know, some calculations.
And the government's made one and we're not allowed to see it.
Well, if I may say so, everybody knows that, you know, when it comes to economic fundamentals and market fundamentals, the economy is dynamic. The prospect of free trade outside of the European Union is also a dynamic factor that should be, you know, naturally considered in the round. Right. Nothing can be based. I think it's pretty disingenuous to claim that there is an economic model based on a new deal that has come together literally in the last 24 hours through an EU negotiation to say that is the economic footprint for our country. That, I think, is pretty disingenuous.
If MPs back this deal tomorrow, does the government promise that no deal is dead now and forever?
Well, I think the key thing about backing this deal is that this will get Brexit done. And
that wasn't my question.
The EU. Well, yes, absolutely. Because
no deal's dead now and forever. You guarantee the UK will not trade in future with the EU on WTO terms.
The point about this deal, Eddie, and this is why we need this deal to get Brexit done.
Again, forgive me, you're repeating the mantra. You're not dealing with the question.
Actually, if
do you guarantee the UK will not trade in future with the EU on WTO terms?
We will have a piece of legislation called the Withdrawal Agreement Bill that will go through Parliament, and that'll absolutely put all the fundamentals in place to ensure that we leave on October the 31st with a deal. And that is why getting the votes in Parliament tomorrow is so important, because that enables us to get the bill, the WAB bill, through Parliament and then leave on October the 31st and start the new future relationship with the European Union. This is a process, and tomorrow is one stage, a vitally important part of that process that will then put all the other pieces together
and
enable that smooth transition so that we can leave with a deal.
Understood.
And that there is no deal.
I'm asking you about, in fact, how these votes are being achieved, because the Conservative Brexiter John Barron says ministers like Dominic Raab and Michael Gove have told him that if the trade talks with the EU don't produce a deal by the end of next year, the UK would leave the transition and trade with the EU on no-deal terms, WTO terms, which is why I'm asking you. And you've not ruled out that would happen.
Well, I don't see that happening at all.
But that's not a guarantee, and people need to know. It's very important, as you say.
Well, actually, I can tell you now, Eddie, I'm not coming on your programme to say this is what is going to happen, because tomorrow is the most vital piece of all of this. We will have the debate in Parliament. MPs themselves.
Yes, we know all of that. You're not dealing with the point. You can't answer the point.
I am dealing with the point if you let me come to it.
No, you're not coming to it. Tell me if WTO terms are ruled out.
Then WTO terms are not going to happen, are they? Because we'll get a deal and then we move into the future partnership.
And if the trade talks don't work?
Well, we will work to make sure the trade talks...
And if they don't, do you rule it out?
If I may say so, 86 days ago, people were saying...
I don't need a history lesson. I'm looking to the future.
People were saying that we would never get the withdrawal agreement reopened, would never get rid of the backstop. We have been working and negotiating
that's not very reassuring, is it, Priti Patel?
Well, I think you should be reassured on that basis, because we are committed, Eddie, to working with our European counterparts to deliver in terms of that future partnership, as outlined in the political declaration, so that we can continue an economic relationship with the European Union. And then through free trade arrangements, obviously have the type of agreements and arrangement with the rest of the world. That is doing this in the right way, the measured way, and in a smooth way that we could have through the withdrawal agreement.
We've established you will negotiate it in good faith, but you can't guarantee that there would be
we haven't even started the negotiations yet.
You can't guarantee it, and people have to think about that before the vote. Now, you're the Home Secretary. Why have London streets been blocked again by protesters?
Well, I think you'll find today, in particular, that London streets, there is a demonstration taking place from Extinction Rebellion, but you'll also see that the police are doing the right thing and moving people on, moving the protesters on, so that members of the public, Londoners, can get about, going around the street, going around
Johnson
London.
Lookalike climbing the Elizabeth Tower.
Well, that is, I don't know the details as to what's happened there, because I've been in cabinet.
I've just told you. I can tell you that a man dressed as Boris Johnson climbed the Elizabeth Tower. Why don't you know what's going on? You're the Home Secretary.
You've just told me this, and I've seen this in the news. The fact of the matter is the police are dealing with this. They're dealing with the protesters, as they have been for the last week.
The most secure building in Britain. There are hundreds of police officers on the street, and somebody gets to climb the Elizabeth Tower.
And there are many other secure buildings as well that
Aren't
have been targeted by people that want to behave in an unlawful manner, and
they will be arrested. The Palace of Westminster,
and people will be arrested for behaving unlawfully.
Priti Patel, thank you.